So we're going to be, this is live stream to the RGL channel. I'm composing a tweet here, so I'll try to get us live. So give me just a second here, but we are live. So thanks so much again. Really do appreciate it. It's nice to meet you, by the way. Yeah,
nice to meet you too. I feel like there's something weird going on. I quickly make some.
Yeah, no problem.
Maybe. Okay, now it's flickering. Something is very strange with my camera. I don't know why, but I hope it's okay. But yeah, it should be fine, I guess.
Okay, let's see. I'll try. Okie doke. Hopefully, I'm going to do a quick check and make sure the audio is working. Okay, it sounds like it is. So I'm never quite sure. I feel like sometimes with streaming the audio, like I just sometimes am guessing, if it's like if the audio is correct and everything like that.
Yeah, I know that feeling too.
I'm curious, have you ever been streaming and had technical issues but not known it because you have the blindfold on?
Yeah, often actually. Like it happened quite a few times.
Oh no.
Especially like forgetting to record or like forgetting to set the audio source in OBS and then I didn't have game sound or something. So it happened.
Oh no. Okay, here we go. Okie doke. So just to give you kind of like a heads up as well, I think we'll just, I'll first ask you a little bit about like, how you got started in gaming, but then how you got started with blindfolded speedrunning and things like that. And then we'll do a deep dive into Mario 64 and Breath of the Wild. I think we'll probably, if you're okay, chatting a little more about maybe the 16 and the 70 star runs as opposed to the 120 because there's just so much. I don't want to take all day. Of course. Cool. Okay, awesome. Okie doke, I'm recording there, just making sure everything sounds okay. And let's see here. Okay, let's do this first. Hello, everyone. Good morning if you're in the States. Good afternoon, evening. If you're in Germany, good evening. So we're going to be doing a live podcast recording. If this is your first time you're watching this on a Monday, feel free to throw anything out there in the chat if you want to throw any questions on that. But I'm sure we're going to have plenty to talk about. So you can sit back, relax, enjoy the conversation and things like that. So, Bubzia, any questions or anything like that before we get started? We'll kind of dive right in if you don't mind.
Actually not much. Like, I don't know exactly how the format will look like, but I guess I will see.
Super casual conversation. If you need to stop for any reason or anything like that, I'm hoping this doesn't go longer than about an hour, but just give you kind of heads up on the timing and everything like that. But if we wanted to go down and go off the script, or there's no script, but if we go a different direction, it's okay.
No, that's all fine with me then.
Cool. Okay, I'm gonna do one more quick sound check. Your sound looks great on my side, so I'm going to turn you up just a tad. Okay. Okay, and if you happen to be in the chat live right now, if anything doesn't sound right, please let me know. We can make adjustments and things like that. So, okay, one last little tweak here. Sorry, just give me one more second. Need to double check on... Okay, we're live. Cool. Okay, here we go. Hello, everybody. My name is Lat Mackey, and this is Sequence Break, a podcast that features conversations with speedrunners, developers, content creators, and everything in between. Thanks so much for being here and joining us today. This is an international version. It's 10 o'clock here in California and 7 o'clock over there in Germany. And so excited to welcome Bubzia. Thank you so much for taking the time. Welcome.
Yes, hello, and thank you for having me here. I'm always happy to talk about the blindfolded side of gaming, so happy to be here.
I'm gonna, I've been watching a fair amount of your runs this past week in preparation for our conversation, because I do remember, for me, the first time I ever saw you do anything like this was actually at SGDQ 2021, and I'm like, how did it take me this long to find some of your stuff? But I kept saying to myself, I probably just kept saying, holy shit, this is like amazing. Like, what am I can't even still believe what I'm watching. So thanks so much. I can't wait to dive in. Let's first just get started, like kind of a little bit, like first, what was your start in gaming? What was like the first games you played? How did you get started in playing video games?
Oh, video games very, very long time ago. Since I'm a baby, probably. Like my brother was already into gaming when I was very, very young. So he played like, I don't know, like on his SNES and N64 and yeah, I just was like sitting around with him and then playing myself later on as well, like before I could even read and stuff. So yeah, had its roots very, very early on.
Did you find yourself gravitating towards any type of like, were you more into the platforming games or like RPGs? What was kind of like the genre that you found fun in?
I really liked RPGs, or like still do. But I think that was like the biggest. In the beginning, it was mostly like Ocarina of Time and stuff. Also like the action RPGs, I guess. But later on, also like JRPGs and stuff were really my field, I would say.
And then what I guess, at least if I can understand your kind of your profile from SRC, it seems like you got into speedrunning before you tried blindfold runs, or I'm curious, what's the journey to get us there?
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, because in fact it was like I kind of started with blindfolded and then got more into normal speedrunning. So it's definitely not the normal approach that you would do, I think. But no, I saw some SM64, some Super Mario 64 speedruns from like GDQ, I think, on like randomly on YouTube one day, and I thought like, this is so cool. Wow, this is like so, they use so cool tricks and all. But like I didn't have like any like motivation to try it myself or anything until like very much later, where I saw a runner guy doing like Ocarina of Time 100% blindfolded for like a charity event on Twitch. Like that's also the time when I like started to hang around on Twitch a bit. And yeah, and there I was like, wow, this is like so cool. He uses like setups, like using the sound and like jumping 5 times to the right, 5 times forward and stuff. So it was like really this logical approach that like draw me in. And yeah, since the only real speedrun I saw before that was like SM64, I just like deep dived into Mario and was like, okay, why don't I try to get like a star blindfolded? And then it happened, kind of one to the other.
I gotta totally agree with you. One of the earliest blindfolded speedruns I had seen was probably Punch Out from GDQ, and then as well, Runner Guy has been on the podcast, because just I can't imagine. I guess after you've put so many hours into a game, you can you feel more comfortable, or at least thinking about trying this. What was like your first attempt at a blindfolded anything? At what game was it? And what was it like?
Yeah, it was like, as I said, Super Mario 64. I literally just sat down. It was the very first star that you would usually grab in a speedrun, like in Bomb Bomb Battlefield, the boss fight. It's nowadays considered a relatively hard star, actually, but it was like the beginning, I guess, like the first star that you would normally take. So I just went there, like tried, like how would this possibly, like how could I do this? And then I like tried around to like do some backflips, punches. It was very slow. It was very, very slow. But after like a couple of minutes, I like managed to create like a route for it. And then I blindfolded myself and just like got it after a few tries, which was very cool. It was like very encouraging and motivating, I guess, that it like actually worked out what I like worked on. So yeah.
That's super interesting, because just not to bring it back to Runner Guy for a moment, but Runner Guy had put literally thousands of hours into the game before he had even attempted some of this stuff, and it seems like you're not, I don't want to say opposite, but you were tried the blindfolded stuff first. That's like
yeah, no, it's very true, and it still stands until this day, like because it's like a whole different approach, I think, to blindfolded gaming and speedrunning. Because what Runner Guy did mostly is like, yeah, he knew the game from inside out. Like he really has the deep knowledge of Ocarina of Time. He knows the room layouts, all the enemies, all the items and stuff. So he really knows the world. And also what he did is he went into the game without basically practicing beforehand with eyes. So he just blindfolded himself and tried to figure out setups like on the fly, basically.
Wow.
And this is still something that many, like, it's not really common nowadays that you like do this kind of approach. Mostly, as unfortunate as it is, like it is just a fact that if you like route the game like me, first with eyes and then blindfold yourself, you will get faster results, and like also like gameplay wise faster results in terms of a speedrun at least. So yeah, it's like it's a very, very extremely impressive field to like play through the game without previously practicing it. But yeah, my approach was exactly the opposite, as you said. Like I clearly with eyes first practiced everything step by step, every input on the controller. I memorized everything and then just repeated it basically with the blindfold.
So that's an interesting approach to me, where you're memorizing basically every single input. And that was very apparent as I've watched many of your PBs at this point. Is there something that I guess I wanted to kind of get, like, how are you able to memorize those things? I know when I was in school, in some of the classes that I had to take, where I did, like biology was one of them, where you had to memorize all the anatomy and all these kind of things, and I really struggled with having to memorize stuff. So I'm curious, is there anything in your past or anything like that that has helped you with this, or is this just something that's appealing to you? How do you get to this point?
No, like not at all. I'm actually not as stupid as it might sound. I'm not very good with memory, like in real life either.
Wow.
Like it's just, I guess, the hours and hours of practice I put into it. Like it's, for me, the memorization comes mostly from like automatically from the process of like routing the game, practicing the game. I don't use like any fancy like memory techniques. Like I've spoken with some like memory champs and stuff, like, and they have this like crazy techniques where they do like the mind palaces and like memorize stuff based on like numbers that they see in the real world or something. But I have like, it's, for me, it's mostly just put the effort in and practice it, and until you know it. And then I guess with time it became easier. Like it is true, like nowadays I can memorize things much faster, but yeah, initially it was just pure smacking my head against the wall until I know it, kind of.
That's I gotta tell you, that's a little reassuring to know that that's been your process. Makes me feel a little bit better, but no, that's for us normal folks. No, but that's super cool. So then, what would you consider then the first run that you actually, was it 16 star for Mario 64, like the first completed run, and what was that like to actually finish a run for the first time?
Yeah, it was Super Mario 64 with 16 stars, and Blindfolded SM64 has never been done before, so it was like a big kind of deal for me, at least. Like, yeah, big, like that's why also lots of the motivation came from, like, can I actually, like, it started with like 1 star, okay, it's cool, I can get a star, but then I got like more and more stars, and eventually I was like, maybe I can finish the game. And then like I started routing the stars that are actually in the run, and like the Bowser fights that are needed. And yeah, this kind of journey towards the first finished run was like quite huge. It took me a long time, like half a year of preparation or something, like really long time. And the run itself was horrible. Like it took me more than 3 hours to beat 16 star, where nowadays I can do it in 20 minutes.
Wow.
So yeah, and it was also a big grind. I had many failed attempts after like 2 hours or something, where I just had to give up because I mismemorized some numbers or something. And yeah, but when I actually got it, then it was like such an amazing feeling. Like the thing that I worked on, like on my own, like on just like from my own efforts, like actually worked out, and I managed to do it. It was like a really, really cool and great feeling, I have to say.
Were you streaming the grind for that first 16 star run?
Yes, I was. That was when I started also like streaming on Twitch. It was like now 6 years ago, a bit more than 6 years, I think. And yeah, it was just like, it's funny because on my very, very first stream, a friend of mine now, like Katoon24, he's called, he was the one, or he was / is one of the moderators of the Blindfolded community. So he just like super randomly on my very, very first stream with like 1 viewer, he somehow joined my stream and found me and like invited me to like the Blindfolded community and stuff. So like it was quite lucky. So at least like there were like, I think 2 or 3 people from the Blindfolded community there that to like watch, because if you start out on Twitch and streaming, like it's mostly like, yeah, it's very hard to get kind of any kind of audience, from my experience. So yeah, when I grinded all of this, then like people came to watch a bit, and I had like, I don't know, I think like 15 viewers or something at the end of the world first. That was like, for me, like super big. That's like a whole classroom behind me. It's like super cool. So,
the thing I think is so interesting too is it's such a unique, especially on Twitch. It's an interesting, unique, because you're not reading the chat while you're doing this, and so a lot of this is on you, and so we're obviously there for what you're doing and the gameplay and everything, and that's it's a much different streaming experience than anything else.
Yeah, I am also by my chat called the #1 chat ignorer, so I take the title.
Yeah, it's so perfect. There's one thing I have noticed, and this has actually been a lot of guests have mentioned this, that depending on the game that you play or where you're starting out, quite often the community does find these things. Like there are some, I run a lot of niche games, and so if I'm playing a bonk game, the 5 people who are into bonk usually we find each other, and for your case, the Blindfolded community, were you, it doesn't even sound like you obviously weren't a part of it, or you hadn't found that community yet.
Yeah,
how was that? How cool was that to know there were other people out there doing this?
Yeah, it was really, really cool. And like, it was back in the days, like a really small community. We were like, I don't know, like 10 people in the Discord or something. So it was a really, really kind of niche thing. And it was really cool because there were like some other runners. I looked at their runs afterwards. Like we exchanged some like ideas about like strategies. Like even if they were not interested in like Mario or anything, Cartoon was doing, I think, Donkey Kong Country Blindfolded, was Parisian player who did Link to the Past Blindfolded, like Zelda. So like we were all from like different kind of genres, but like there was still like this tiny group who you could like hang out with and like meet people on the internet. So it was quite nice.
So cool. I think this is actually a great kind of way to ease ourselves into what makes Blindfolded SM64 speedrunning possible. So what I guess first, how is this even possible? And then secondly, what are some of like the, I guess you could call basic mechanics of trying to run the game when you can't see anything?
SM64 was like getting a single star or like any kind of star that you want in the game, besides like the really difficult ones, is actually like not difficult, I would say, like at all. Like if anyone would sit down with like a bit of Mario knowledge, he could definitely get a star, or probably like 10 or 20 stars, like easily. The biggest problem with the like speedrunning the game, or like for the first time at least, was that not the stars were difficult, but like everything in between. Like for example, the Bowser stages or like the Bowser fights. And for those, you had to come like really up with like clever and like creative ideas that like you don't even see in the speedrun, because there they just like spin him and throw him, but like you cannot do that really blindfolded. So you had to come up with like new ways. And yeah, it was, I think in Mario, especially in many games it ends up like this, but in Mario especially, it's very lucky that it works at all. If the developers would just like change one tiny thing in like the Bowser fight, like disable one of the glitches that we use to like defeat him, for example, it's like, yeah, barely possible at this point. So I think lucky coincidence that it's possible at all. And like basic techniques, what makes it possible. In Mario especially, it has a very, very great moveset that like we call it like normalized movement. Basically, like repeated actions that can, for example, give you the same distance every single time. Like if you backflip in Super Mario 64, you always gain like, let's say 5 units of distance to your starting point. And like it's very consistent. If you want, you can just like really count everything, like do 20 backflips, do 5 punches. Punches also move you a bit forward. There are like you can work the entire game out like that. It's just very slow. So and in the beginning, most of the strats literally were like this. Like I remember I had a strat in like the second Bowser stage which said like punch 55 times, and it took just like 2 minutes of like Mario punching forward. And it was really, yeah, it was really slow, but it worked. So I think it's really very good that it has such a consistent moveset. And also it has really great options to make it faster also, like, because yeah, it's the same as in the visual speedrun. Like the more you play the game, the more you get like used to Mario's movement, and you can like in a higher level of the gameplay nowadays, for example, you can really like imagine and visualize in your head how Mario would behave with certain cameras, how the camera turns in reaction to Mario's body moving. So it's like a really, I think that the physics in the game are so complex, or like so well made, really helps out to like make it a good speedrun on Blindfolded speedrun as well.
That was another thing I was curious about. When you mentioned you've counted a lot, and you can actually hear sometimes when you're counting and doing those and the beat, listening to beats and things like that. Other times, when it's blindfolded, are you actually seeing the game, visually in your mind, and when you're doing some of this stuff, or all of it? I don't know.
Yeah, like it is kind of a mix between having my memorizing my notes, like the inputs that I need to do, and combining those with the visuals that I'm like supposed to see. So I don't know, back in the, if you would ask me a few years ago, I would say I don't really visualize the game much. It's mostly I follow my notes, and if something goes wrong, for example, and I need to do a backup, then I try to imagine, okay, how could the situation look like? Do I need to go to the left or right? And then try to visualize it. Nowadays, it really changed with just more time spent with the game and more experience, I guess. Also, when I play video games blindfolded, I mostly see exactly the entire game playing in front of my head. I'm just playing in my head, basically.
Yeah. This is a really good point. Somebody in the chat, GameFace, just mentioned that you never realize how unrandom a game is until someone blindfold runs it. It's interesting to mention that, because there is a fair amount of randomness in Mario, but to your point, it wouldn't be possible if there wasn't a certain amount of non-randomness, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's even if there is randomness, then you always need to somehow find the middle path to make it as good as well possible as it is. If for example an enemy drops 1 to 3 coins, you really need to first of all keep track of how many you got after all, or what is the possibility, where can they fly to, can I somehow still try to collect them afterwards and stuff. So yeah, but randomness is a big topic for sure.
Man, okay. So many questions there. I didn't even think about the coin drop. When I was watching I haven't watched the whole thing because it's quite a long time. But the 120 star run that you're doing now in Mario 64, I mean, coins go everywhere, right?
Yeah. There it really peaked with randomness, especially with the longer stars and the 100 coin stars. There are some that are just if you don't get a certain amount of random coins from enemies, you just need to reset the stage and retry. You need a certain threshold, for example, of good luck. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
I gotta say, the physics and the way that Mario controls in 64 still feels good to this day. It's a great feeling game in the hands. Mm-hmm. But I've noticed, since we've seen there have been so many people doing work on the game nowadays, we know that walls kind of interact in a weird way and things like this. When you're routing this or trying to find some of the specific strats, is that one of those things where you try to avoid some of the pitfalls or some of the issues that could arise? Because I know it's pretty easy to clip through walls in Mario 64. So how does something like that happen?
No, actually we use it to our advantage more than it is our hindrance, I think. Very often the super obscure glitches, or like you said, a wall where you can suddenly clip through, they actually help us out with creative setups that you usually would not see in a visual speedrun because they are probably too slow or something. But in blindfolded they might skip just the tiny section that otherwise is super not possible. And it's not only in Mario, in many video games I noticed that it's always the weird insider knowledge tricks that really can help out and make the difference at the end of the day.
No, totally. And on kind of to the point of the randomness as well, I recently just rewatched your SGDQ 2021 run, and there's an invisible wall at one point that you bump into. There's no accounting for that, but I guess I'm curious, after playing the game so long, have you tried to come up with strategies and ways to get around that? Do you just restart? What do you do when you hit something like that?
No, some parts, the invisible walls, after a while, they are definitely, about them and where they are and where they can occur. So if you know that there is a wall, you should have a backup for it. That's the everything in blindfolded. You need a backup for everything, no matter what happens. And yeah, with invisible walls, they are like, it's not like they are inconsistent. They are fortunately very consistent. They are just invisible. So you can like, there are practice tools where you can visualize them, for example, and then like jump around them, for example. But yeah, when you during a run hit a new one that you did not know about, for example, then things get tricky. And that also happened probably in this GDQ run you said. Yeah, then what is mostly the case is, okay, you hit something, you hear the sound that you hit something like a wall. And then, yeah, you have to create a backup on the fly, basically. You have to visualize, okay, I'm getting pushed a bit further back, I fall down, and then, okay, I cannot just repeat the action probably because there's apparently a wall. So maybe try a new way to go around it, for example, or like try a higher jump, like a triple jump or something to go above it. So you need to really on the fly, like come up with a solution that might work. And if not, then if nothing works, resetting and just trying again is the best way to go usually.
It makes a lot of sense. And, you know, because there's still so much, time, I don't say time available, but you know, there's so many things you're still developing and still learning. It seems like, you know, sometimes it's just okay, let's just reset my position, let's exit out of the stage, and those kind of things.
Yeah, and in most cases, I have to admit, it's like, that's also what I advise new players often in blindfolded speedrunning. It's a bit of a, again, sad realization, but because backing up things like this is like one of the most fun parts about blindfolded speedrunning, in my opinion, because like you get confronted with like an unknown situation and you have to somehow solve it. And if you manage to solve it like on the fly, you are like, whoa, I'm so smart. This is so cool. But on the other hand, if a new player is there and he is not very familiar on how to back up things like in a fast meta or something, it is in 99% of cases in a speedrun setting faster to just repeat whatever you're doing, like reset and close the console, open it again, or go back to the main hub and then re-enter the stage. It is in 99% faster to just do that as quickly as possible and make a mistake. Okay, reset, bam, and try again. But yeah, that kind of takes the fun out of it. So I always say, in order to improve, maybe try like a bit and then reset. But yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that from like the new runner perspective, because quite often some of the, you know, when you get better at a speed run, you know, there's not as many places for you to correct and find a fix to keep going. And to your point, it's kind of nice that you can actually just, you know, quite often you can just reset the room as opposed to having to reset the entire run, especially if you're 40 minutes in or whatever, you know?
Yeah, that is true. At least in Mario 64, it's very generous with that, because you can literally in every stage just exit course and you start in the main hub. You don't even lose like lives or anything. Right. And even if you lose lives, then even if you game over, you just start back from the castle grounds and can go again basically without losing progress. So it's a very beginner-friendly speedrun in that sense, at least. Yeah,
absolutely. What were some of the toughest things, or what has been some of the biggest challenges during the SM64 from any of the runs, the 16, the 70, the 120? What have been some of the more challenging strats to learn?
Well, okay, like most of the answer would just be like every single star in 120 star that was not in the 70 star route yet, because that was just absolute hell. But on a different answer, like as I said, like learning it for the first time, like the 16 star routing, when I had like no knowledge yet about any techniques, I used an Xbox controller without even notches or anything. Like it was horrendous. So yeah, like the first routing was very difficult, and I think that's something that you just need to get through, and like you learn a lot on that journey.
If you don't mind me interrupting for just 1 second, why were you using an Xbox controller?
I was playing on emulator, and I just had like an Xbox controller lying around, so I didn't even consider that like notches might be useful on like a GameCube controller to hold straight up. Yeah, it happened often during the run that I thought I hold straight up, but I didn't actually. It was like slightly upright or something, because yeah, Xbox controllers have like a round stick shape.
Yeah,
and would never do it again. No.
I don't blame you. So the initial routing, that seems like, so just learning the thing to begin with, and then
yeah, that was very difficult. And then yeah, as I said, like 120 star is just a whole other beast. That's like the other end of the spectrum. Like that, it's like just so difficult, and you need all of your knowledge and all the expertise that you gathered over so many years, and it's still like impossible. So there were so many stars. Like that's the thing with difficulty in Mario. Like it's just extremely lucky that 70 star is possible as it is right now. Somehow by some magic, there's I think right now we are at like 75 stars that are like doable within a minute. And then every like 5 stars that you add to that, it's like an exponential difficulty growth, because there's just nothing that is easy left in the game. But it's like super luckily the number 70 that it works out. But if you want to get like 80 stars, okay, maybe there are some okay stars still. 90 star, it gets kind of tricky. If you go to 100, then you really need to start packing out like difficult and long stars. And yeah, in 120 star, why it was so difficult is that if you consider the 100 coin stars in many of the stages, a single star there could take like 30 to 40 minutes without mistake. Like the 100 coin stars in Leaf Lava Land, or like the desert, the shifting sand land. These are literally, every single star is like an own speedrun basically, and you have to perform 15 different speedruns back to back to back just for like 10 additional stars. And yeah, like many of the stars are longer than a full 16 star run at this point, so it's just incredibly difficult.
I gotta ask, like, how you got there in the first place. Like, what the hell made you think that you could actually do this? Because it's still, my mind still is struggling to grasp how you even get to that point.
Yeah, it was. I honestly don't know what made me do it. It's always the funny thing if someone in like chat says like, I bet you couldn't do this and that, and then you are like, oh man, I bet I could do it with just enough time. And it was kind of like 120 star was like that, just on a very large scale, because yeah, it was like I started off just like for fun to route a few other stars than 70, because Katoon, another speedrunner, did also like single star challenges, and he got to 118 stars actually, like just single stars, not in a speedrun session. And 120 stars have never been done. So I was like, I can try to like also do like single stars, just like to have some fun routing and stuff. And yeah, then I finished at some point all 120 stars for the first time. And yeah, I don't know how it came to be, but yeah, somehow I took the very wrong decision to try it in a single segment, like in a speedrun setting without breaks, just all 120 stars in a normal speedrun. And that led me to a whole year of everyday practice, kind of. So it was a big decision and time commitment, I guess. The
70 star run, I gotta, just to be perfectly honest, there were times where I almost forgot you were blindfolded doing it, because the strats that you've come up with and the things that have been developed, it looks really impressive, so you almost forget that you're blindfolded. Has there ever been a time of frustration and where you've thought, where maybe it's time to just take a break from this or anything like that? Because I can only imagine for each star, the amount of time it took, even for the 70, which you've mentioned has gotten scripted pretty well, but it took thousands of hours to get to that point. Has there ever been any times of pure frustration?
Yeah, very like often. It is a very like frustrating hobby, because you have to put lots of effort and time into everything you do. Like you cannot just I don't know. You cannot just like eyeball it, kind of. You have to really be confident on your strats and know that you are practiced enough. And as you said, you spend hundreds of hours into just practicing, and I can guarantee you, in the first 5 to 10 tries, it will still every single time fail when you do a run. So it's like very, very frustrating at points where you put so much effort into it and nothing works at the end of the day. But you have to just keep going and keep practicing until it kind of works. So it is unfortunately a frustrating hobby, but that makes the reward at the end when it works out even better. So it's kind of the trade-off. in my opinion.
It's such a good point that yes, for it's funny because in any kind of speedrunning, quite often, in fact, we're almost always failing way more than we are succeeding, right? So,
Yeah.
so it makes them does absolutely make those times so much better. Is the I gotta ask at this point, is the 120 star is the type of thing that you want to continue to keep seeing what you can do with it? Is it time to take a break? You know, where are you at in this? Because it's such a long speed run.
No, like the 120 star was so far like a one-time thing. It's just too much time. Like
Right.
I got pretty lucky with the run because it was very good. Even for my strats that I used, it was very good. I only had like 2 major hiccups where I lost like 1 hour on a single star twice. So like 2 hours of time lost in 2 stars, which is But besides that, it went really, really well. And I think if I would now go and do like a second round of stratting and routing, of like improving, optimizing the stars, I could get the time probably down by a couple of hours even. But it would still not be easy to beat my old time just because of how lucky I got with many difficult stars, like getting them first try. And yeah, it's just too much of a time commitment right now, at least. Maybe in the future, if I have more time, to again dedicate a whole year to like every single day 120 practice. But yeah, I have so many other projects that I also want to work on. That's why I now, like, it's been a year already since the 120 star run, and I haven't done like anything with it at this point.
This is good.
Yeah.
Small time loss, just an hour or two, you know. I mean, we're talking about an 11-hour run, I guess. I don't know. So brutal.
It is.
One thing I do want to ask before we move on, and that's the Bowser strats, because they're kind of interesting, and it's not something we see in the typical SM64 speedruns. How did you find these? Were you aware of the, like, how did you even, I guess, first of all, let's describe exactly what the Bowser strats are, and then how were they developed?
Yeah, for Bowser, we have 2 different strats. For the first 2 Bowsers, we do something different than for the last Bowser. The first 2 Bowsers work in a way that we use a glitch called tail glitch, where the programmers of the game just messed up with their code, apparently. And you can basically, if you run through Bowser's tail and then run in front of him, and he stands basically like parallel towards you in like an angle, you can just grab him from a front. Like you can store the hitbox of the tail in Mario's paw basically, or a hand, and then like grab him from the front. And you can do that to, like, first of all get an initial grab very easily. And you can also, well, the first idea that I had, or like the first thing I did in speedruns, the first thing I did in speedruns was literally just grabbing him, spinning, and praying to every known deity that I hit the bomb. Like, that was the first strat in the first few runs. And yeah, it took me, like, that's why the first speedruns were also like 3 hours long for 16 star. Like, it could take up to half an hour to just beat one Bowser. So that was brutal. But then I came up with the first strat where I basically grab Bowser's tail, release him, and just like re-grab him instantly. And I noticed that it ever so slightly moves Bowser a tiny bit forward, and you can just like grab him, release, grab him, release, grab him, release. And eventually, still after a long time, but consistently, at least after like 2 minutes maybe of grabbing and releasing, he would touch the bomb and die. And that's nowadays we have it improved. Of course, like, we do still the same kind of concept, but we don't re-grab and release him constantly, but like grab him, run around him. So we do much more distance between us and Bowser, and then re-grab him. So it's much faster. And Bowser, the last Bowser, is a whole other beast, because that is still not 100% solved today. Or like, it is, but it's still very difficult, because there you need 3 bomb hits for the last one. And the first 2 bombs, since the very beginning of time, have stayed the same. You run towards the bomb, and then you hope for Bowser to do a running attack into you. So you basically lure him to a bomb and then put him into the bomb, and then he has it's one hit. It's 50-50 which attack he always does, either jumping or running. So that is still until this day, when you go for world records and he jumps a few times too often, it's probably over. It's just random, which is very unfortunate, the coin flip at the end of the run. And yeah, then you do the same thing again. You need to again go to the second bomb, hope that he does not jump, and hope that he runs. And then the third bomb that you hit on Bowser 3 is the tricky one, because the arena starts to crumble down, and you have to actually spin Bowser and throw Bowser. And yeah, this is until this day just a 2-frame. You have a leeway of 2 frames basically to hit the throw, and we base it off the sound that Bowser makes when you spin. He does like a whoosh, 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 and some smart people figured out that he always starts this whoosh sound when he faces exactly north on the map, or like on the coordinates. It's not based on like where you start, but like on the coordinates. So we can use that to always start this spinning in the same position with the setup, and then we know kind of, okay, when the whoosh sound starts, we need to wait like exactly these 2 frames and then press B, so he has like exactly the angle towards the bomb. But yeah, it's a 2-frame window based off an audio cue, so extremely precise. It's it's extremely and if your position is bad, the window gets even smaller. It can get to up to 1-frame window. So you don't want to do that at the end of the run, but we have to every single time. So it's always heartbreaking when you miss a throw on record pace or something. Yeah.
We're watching the end of your...
Yeah, and the other thing is, if you miss the throw, there's no backups, because Bowser, if you miss a throw, you just have to die and repeat the entire fight again. So it's a really big time loss if you miss, and you don't want to miss ever.
It's mind-boggling that there are tricks like this in a blindfolded speedrun because of all the things that have to line up to make this work. And there's seeing the sense of relief on you, by the way. You can tell like how stressful that must be. It's still it's kind of even just the fact of running around. I mean, that just still blows my mind that you can, at this point you've gotten so much practice that you can do things like that. It does not sound like it's the type of thing you want to face at the end of a run like this.
I don't know why, but it's so common for blindfolded speedruns that the very end is so horribly bad. Like, I don't know if developers do that on purpose for us. It's always the last boss, or like the last phase of the last boss, that is like absolutely inhuman and not fair for blindfolded. But yeah, nothing you can do about that.
The last thing I'd like to comment just really quick on Mario is that basically anybody who's come on the podcast to talk about Mario speedruns, it seems like the developers have always created a path for beginners and a path for those who have played the game before, the advanced run. Almost, it seems like it was made for us speedrunners. It seems like some of that design has actually contributed to making a blindfolded speedrun possible. And it sounds like from what you've described, that's kind of the case for what has made it possible for you able to actually do these things. Have you noticed that in your runs?
True. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Especially with Mario, where you have so much freedom over your movement and approaches of like how to get stars. It's like, I think it's really great. And it's one of the strengths of the game as well, that it's so like free in the movement. In other games, like many RPGs, for example, are much more restricted by the path you have to take. You just have to follow the story, for example, or the story points, storyline. And there's not much room of like, okay, I'm going to do this first and maybe get stronger and then do the main story.
Right.
But in Mario, it's like you can choose which stars you get. You can choose how you get those stars. You can choose which stages you go to. It's like completely open. So it really makes for like nice sandbox, creative kind of routing.
Very cool, very cool. I highly recommend if folks you ever haven't seen anything like this, do yourself a favor and watch basically any of Bubzia's Mario 64 runs, because they're absolutely incredible. And also, it's been really fun to see the progression on. You're still shaving minutes off of 70 star. I mean, this is just, it's kind of mind-boggling that there's still time left. You could still keep going with specifically the 70 star, because a little less. It's not 11 hours at this point. So.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk a little bit about Breath of the Wild and what the hell made you even think something like this would even be possible to do a run like this?
Yeah, Breath of the Wild is actually one of the few games that I have not initially, or like as a world first, did myself, because there was already a blindfolded speedrun by Crystal Saver, also a good friend of mine, who specializes on blindfolding, also many games like me, but on the Zelda series especially. He's done many Zelda games, like most of the 2D ones, Ocarina of Time, Breath of the Wild, all of these.
Wow.
So he actually got a fairly good time, like a sub 2 hours before I started in Blindfolded Breath of the Wild. And I just found the run pretty cool and wanted to try it myself. And it was the first time I learned a blindfolded run from someone else's like strats also.
Oh yeah.
Just then I decided to optimize the run quite a bit, and we had to split the categories because I can show this in the camera.
Please.
We have this controller here, which is an 8-bit though. It's a third-party controller, and it has a D-pad as an analog stick compared to like the Pro controller.
Right.
So it allows for 100% consistent up or down or left-right movement, which is extremely powerful as it turns out. So we had to split the category because if you with the new route that both me and Saver, after the discovery of this thing, created, the old world record was like 1 hour 50 or something, and nowadays the world record is under 1 hour. So just the controller switch and a few new strats shaved off a whole hour of the speedrun. But yeah, we basically from scratch again had to reroute everything. So I actually was involved in the routing process quite a bit. And yeah, we optimized together kind of like the whole game again, which is pretty nice. It was like having a sparring partner coming up with ideas together and stuff. And and then I learned to run, and since then I'm running it kind of.
The first time I saw you do this one was at ESA, and they, the camera was able to show the controller, and I think it's actually kind of fascinating to see how that impacts and influences what you're trying to do. You mentioned that you spent time routing, with the new controller, or as you're learning all this stuff. How it's kind of casual, but like, how long does that process take? Because first of all, if you have, at this point, I think many people have played Breath of the Wild. The game's enormous. I mean, it's like this huge game. So how long does it take to do that?
It really depends. I also for me personally, I have so much experience nowadays in blindfolded speedruns already. I'm doing this since 6 years straight, close to every day. So Jeez. I know what I need to look out for, what are the important points to look at. I know the whole learning process of routing a game for myself. So I've done this countless times. So for me, I would say it's not that long even. It takes I don't know, just from scratch, if there's a new route, I don't know, 2 to 3 weeks of couple of hours per day on a weekday. So it's not too much. It's maybe total, if you want a really good solid route, up until 100 hours of work. But as I also mentioned on my first speedrun with Mario 16 star, it took me half a year of that kind of amount of time. So it really just also goes down with practice. But I definitely think the routing usually takes the longest time. Practicing and running the game afterwards is actually not such a big time commitment anymore. It's mostly the getting the route done, and especially also in this case, if there is another person who already came up with strats, if there are existing strats that are done by other people, then that all contributes to a lower time as well.
So if you can, walk us through some of the things you needed to learn to do this run. The game, I mean, if we're comparing it to Mario 64, it's 20 years later. So obviously gaming has evolved and everything. What are some of the things you've had to learn?
There are, first of all, I had to learn quite a few of the glitches and stuff that the visual speedrun does. Because when I started playing Breath of the Wild blindfolded, I had zero idea about the visual speedrun. I think, not even seen one. I just knew that the game is pretty broken and you can beat it very fast with eyes. The visual speedrun is, I think, for reference, 30 minutes long or something. I don't even know.
It seems to keep going down. It's been just dry. I mean, the community's been wild. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, the movement wise, it's really exactly the same as Mario. I don't think there is much of a difference. Or to other older games like Ocarina of Time, you have your good old normalized movement options. Like in Breath of the Wild, it's the hopping, the bunny hops, like back flipping, side hopping, forward hopping. You can use those to have a consistent distance. I found a technique where you can make the camera basically static, so it doesn't follow Link around, but like always faces one direction. That was just luck that this works though. But in many Switch games, I noticed that it is always the same kind of deal. That the Switch engine has somehow a system that when you tap the camera button in any direction, somehow the camera locks. Like if you keep it neutral, the camera will follow the player. But if you just tap down, for example, on the camera, it will stay in one place for some reason. So, and that luckily worked in Breath of the Wild. So I could just apply that as well. And then, yeah, what I needed to learn from new things, mostly like the visual speedrun, like fighting Ganon, for example, is not very easy if you have never done it, fighting the blights and stuff at the end. But yeah, it's something that you just need to go ahead and learn and like practice, as well as the glitches like fall damage canceling. You need to know how to do wind bombs, for example. Like these are all things that you like need to learn as a beginner of the visual speedrun as well. So you kind of need to dive a bit into the visual speedrun first.
There are a couple of questions I have, and I do want to get to the blights and the Ganon fight, because there's not a ton of combat in the run, interestingly enough, until the end.
No, there's like one enemy, I think.
Yeah, so which is like super interesting. There was something I noticed you do when you're transitioning through shrines. It looks like you're mashing. Is there what's going on during the transition as you enter a shrine?
Oh yeah, that's actually very interesting. No, it's because some of the shrines, especially Stasis, in the beginning, they have platforms on a cycle. So as soon as you enter the shrine, you always need to perform the same movement in the same speed. And for that, we need to basically reach this pedestal where you gain the new ability, always in the fastest possible way. So what I'm doing is I'm just mashing. I can show that quickly.
Yeah.
It's a very, very weird hand movement that I do, because there's a cutscene going on, and you have to hold always up and left. So up left on the controller here, up left, then camera down. So as I explained earlier, to lock the camera. So you have to hold up left, down on the D-pad. You have to hold B also to sprint. So I'm holding like 4 buttons now with one hand.
A Vulcan
then
grip.
You have to mash X to skip the cutscene, and then you have to mash A to activate the pedestal. So I'm like sitting like this here on the table. It's like, yeah, my hand is like extremely. It's really not a comfortable position to be in, but
when I was watching it, I'm like, all you have to do is just press the X button to skip the cutscene. I don't know what's going on, but no, of course not.
If you hold exactly this combination of buttons, you always perfectly sprint towards the pedestal basically and activate it as the fastest possible time. So it's first of all fast. Second of all, you can catch cycles afterwards in the shrines. So.
And it does sound like there were times where you're counting or you're also using beats as well. That has the same kind of combo. Is it the same technique as you were using in SM64, where you just count the number of inputs and things like that?
Yeah, similar. Like in Breath of the Wild, or like in Mario. Let's start there. In Mario, what is very common is, as you said, like beat counting, to count the background music and like bind inputs to the rhythm. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Like if there's a rhythm like this, you can, for example, on 1 hold up, on 2 jump, on 3 ground pound and stuff. So like you can make like sequences of inputs like that. In Breath of the Wild, I personally used to use it as well and still do. But the problem is, in Breath of the Wild, there's not really music there, because it's mostly like ambient sounds. It's just like birds chirping around and stuff. So what I did is from Mario experience, I have the slider song in my head, like the and I count this in my head, and then I beat count from the song that I play in my head, basically. So it's like, we call it pseudo beat counting. So yeah, it's still the same concept, but we don't use the game music anymore, but like a song that we make up in our brains. And that's one thing that we use in terms of beat counting. And the second thing is Link has fortunately very clear footstep sounds. So in many sections where you need to run a long while up, for example, then it would be too tiring to count this song in the head, or like too inconsistent. So what we do is we just count like, I don't know, 100 footsteps up, for example, and like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then like he walks like that. These are mostly the countings that we do.
There are a couple of other techniques that I noticed. So I actually, I don't know, is Amiibo still used in the current route? I apologize if it's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
How does, so, you know, I guess, how does an Amiibo affect the run? First of all, if nobody has ever watched a speedrun, you know, Breath of the Wild speedrun. And secondly, how do you do that running a third-party controller that doesn't have Amiibo support?
Yeah, so Amiibos in Breath of the Wild are extremely powerful. In visual speedruns, they actually, again, separated in two different categories. One is Amiibo and the other one is no Amiibo, like any percent no Amiibo, for example. And what they do is they always spawn, like different Amiibos spawn different items, but they literally, from the sky, rains resources, basically. For example, meat to heal yourself or to cook, ingredients like mushrooms that can make you stronger, like to cook attack up, buff food, or like defense food and stuff. And they also drop always a chest, which contains like a weapon or like armor, for example. Like that's pretty random though what's inside. But yeah, you can basically get like infinite resources with Amiibos and make the run quite more bearable. And in Blindfolded, yeah, as you said, this controller here that I use, the 8-bit though, it doesn't have Amiibo support. So we actually switch controllers during the run like twice to scan some Amiibos. And the second thing is, I don't know if I have them here, we don't use real Amiibos, but like these kind of little NFC chips here. Just have like noted them with like OOT link, because yeah, Nintendo made a limit on you can only scan an Amiibo once per day. They thought that would help to.
Why the hell they did that? Who knows?
Yeah. But what they did not think about is that you can have two of the same Amiibo, just like two different copies, and there's no restriction on how many of the same Amiibo you can scan per day. So you can only not scan the same Amiibo, but like two different types of the same one, basically. So yeah, we have basically just one real Amiibo, and then we can with any kind of modern smartphone, it's just an Amiibo is nothing else but an NFC chip, which you can buy on the internet for a few cents, or like, I don't know. And yeah, we just make the Amiibos ourselves. Like you can copy the data from the real one to like these chips, basically. So we have like, I don't know, 15 Ocarina of Time links here, one Smash link for Epona, some Mifas, like many kinds of Amiibos. And we just like Amiibo scan, Amiibo scan, Amiibo scan. And then we get like really fast, really lots of resources that we need. And dependent on the route, also armor or weapons. But these days, we usually get them only for health items like meat or fishes.
And another thing I've noticed too is because of the items, there's quite a bit of item management going on, and not being able to see the screen, it seems to me like it adds a level of complexity. But it does seem, I guess, tell a little bit about how how you find your items, make sure that you're on the right, pause menu and everything.
No, it's again a very lucky and fortunate coincidence, I would say. Because Breath of the Wild has actually really, really easy menuing. One of the easiest, I think, that I've like ever seen. Due to two facts mostly. One is items go into the inventory in the order you pick them up. So if you first grab a mushroom and then a fish, you always know the first place will be the mushroom, the second one will be the fish. The second one is there is a sort functionality in Breath of the Wild, and it always sorts the item based on like an internal ID that the items have. So there are lists you can check online, for example, and basically if you know the list layout, like an apple, for example, will always be before any type of mushroom, or like any type of mushroom will always be before any type of the fishes. So as long as you know what you will pick up into your inventory and then sort, you know which place will be what. So you can really consistently like even pinpoint single items, like the attack up mushroom, for example. It's always number 7 of the mushroom family, for example. You just need to make sure that you have all the mushrooms and then you can count it, for example. Yeah, there's some techniques.
You just blew my mind. I should have known this at this point, that the sorting technique was done by this. I was like, I played through Tears of the Kingdom right now, and there's so many items. You know, your inventory ends up just being pages long.
Yes. So yeah, you check that out as well. There it's a bit different because you can also sort by, I think, most attack or something, or like most recently used and also most frequently used, I think. So it probably would help in the blindfolded speedrun to have more options like this as well.
Super good point. Really good point. The other one, I got to be honest, and this one, like everything I basically watched you do, kind of blew my mind, was wind bombing. There's actually moments in the run where you're going to have to wind bomb. And for those, if you're not familiar with a Breath of the Wild speedrun, I wonder if you could just kind of describe what exactly a wind bomb does. And it's been around now, almost it seems like it's one of the earlier discoveries in Breath of the Wild speedrunning. What exactly is it, and how do you use it in the blindfold run?
You know, it's exactly as you said, like it's one of the older glitches already. And a wind bomb is essentially you place a bomb in the air, because in Breath of the Wild you have 2 types of bombs, a round one and a cube, basically. And you jump, you plant a bomb in the air, you delay the other bomb a tiny bit more and plant another bomb in the air, and then you explode the first one. So the explosion hits the second bomb, and the second bomb hits Link, and then Link from the impact gets flying into space, like really far into the air. Just because of like the impact launch, and because the bomb not directly hits, the explosion doesn't hit Link directly, but like the bomb collision of the object, what the bomb is, hits Link, like he doesn't get damaged. So you can, like, for example, use the glider afterwards and like get really far distances done. And yeah, it's a pretty precise trick. It's not too difficult if you learn it once. But yeah, it's like basically blindfolded. It just literally works like in the visual speedrun. It's just a sequence of inputs you need to memorize, like jump, bomb 1, open the menu, second bomb, place it, go back to the first bomb, explode it, and then you fly. So there's not much of a secret really. It's just practice it visually and then close your eyes kind of deal.
I think one of the parts that really kind of blew my mind about this, and this actually kind of I think can lead on to the next part of this here, is you use it to approach Ganon's castle, and you know it seems like of all the areas, you could probably describe this better. Is that one of the parts where there is some randomness or some stuff that's out of your control as you're doing that approach with that wind bomb?
Yeah, there is definitely. Because yeah, it wouldn't be easy enough, of course, in the blindfolded speedrun, but we are under constant influence of, for example, weather RNG. That's a good one. For example, how strong is the wind today? So when you do a wind bomb and then use the glider, it can happen that there is a strong wind towards the east or towards the west, and it will, while gliding towards the castle, for example, put you further to the left or further to the right. And you can get really unlucky with this. Usually it's not a problem, but yeah, it can happen. Same with weather RNG. It can literally randomly decide to rain at some point after finishing the tutorial. And if it rains, you cannot climb anymore. So you're just standing there in front of this wall and like ask yourself, okay, what the hell do I do now? It's raining. It's like quite unfortunate, but also quite rare. So, but yeah, there's quite a bit that can go wrong. Also, like you need to set up the angle pretty precisely. The wind bomb itself can shoot you into a bit of different directions always. So there's lots of details that you have to consider.
I'm glad you mentioned the weather thing, because that's the other part of this. I've been watching your PB, so I've seen the successes. I haven't watched, the failures. Has the weather ever killed a run? Can it, or is there still time for to figure out a way to deal with it or work with it?
No, there's like same as in Mario. You can fortunately in Breath of the Wild in many places like warp back to like the last shrine, for example, and then repeat whatever you were doing. Personally, it has not killed a run. Like I definitely lost lots of time for wind RNG, probably I also lost a run or two due to rain, but I don't really. Yeah, I did actually. I did, but yeah, it doesn't happen often. But I think the current world record actually has rain RNG, and he like Saver has it right now, and I think he had rain randomly, couldn't climb, and then he had to warp back to the last to the entry of Ganon's castle, I think, and then repeat like 1 minute or something. So yeah, unlucky.
So there is a fair amount of combat that happens from castle on toward, especially when we get into the blights and we have to do the Ganon fight. Let's first start, I guess, with the Guardians, because that's, I think there's, when I faced Guardians, I would use a visual cue. When I saw the light, pop up in the eye, I would, how are you able to take on, just a basic Guardian with a blindfold on?
Yeah, Guardians are like, you have to parry their laser to defeat them in an effective way, usually. And yeah, Blindfolded, we use the sounds that they make as the cue, but you can pretty precisely still count it off. They do like this very fast, like this, and then like they target onto you and like shoot, and you're usually dead. But we use this kind of beeping to just count. Like, it's also dependent on the distance towards them, so you always need to make sure that you're at the same distance when you count. Because yeah, the further away you are, the more delay you need to add to your parry. But yeah, that's how we do it usually.
And are the Guardians fights? Are you facing the same Guardians every single time on the climb?
Yes.
Or okay, so that's
it's like the stationary ones are always the same. But it's actually only one at this point. It was two, but it's only one now. And yeah, that one is stationary. He cannot even move, so we can always just like set up our position, wait for him to target us, and then always at the same timing parry. Basically, it's still very precise. Like, it's not easy, but it's manageable.
So in the any percent category, you don't do all of the oh my gosh, what are the ancient
lights?
You don't do the level. You don't get all the why can't I think of the Guardians? Not the Guardians. My gosh, my brain just literally. You don't do all the individual dungeons. Why can't I think of what they're ancient beasts?
Yeah. The divine beasts.
Divine beasts. Thank you. Jeez Louise, my brain just literally turned off for a moment. So the first time that you actually face the bosses is actually during the boss rush. And how the hell do you face these things without seeing their attacks and things like that? It's just mind-boggling that you can actually do this.
Yeah, it's actually quite funny because they're called the blights, the 4 types of Ganon, like the wind blight, fire blight, water blight, and thunder blight. These are the bosses that you usually face in the dungeons, but if you have not done them, you can directly go to Ganon's castle, which is done in the speedrun, and just fight them all at once, kind of back to back. All of those fights are really scripted. Like, we always use the same weapon with the same type of attacks, and like, those fights are really, really scripted, and it works very well. You just it just took a long time to route it out perfectly with weapon durability and attack power and stuff. I think there's literally only randomness in Water Blight phase 2. So in a very small portion, and that's like a 50-50 whether he does one attack or the other, and then you just need to react or like dodge one more time. But yeah, it's like, in the beginning I thought it is a very reactional fight, but it's very, very scripted. The whole reactional fight starts with Ganon for sure. There it's much more. Yeah.
There's a super cool speedrun strat where you fire an arrow off on the first, I think it's Wind Blight. And what exactly is that, and how are you able to do that without seeing what you're doing? It's a very precise trick.
It's a Wind Blight skip. It is a extremely precise trick indeed. You basically shoot an arrow into you enter the cutscene the same kind of frame you shoot an arrow, and then the arrow will be stuck in the air during the cutscene, just like somewhere in space. And with a very precise positioning and timing, you can make this arrow be stuck in the cutscene exactly at the spot where Windblade spawns. So during his spawn animation in the cutscene, he will touch the hitbox of the arrow sometimes with his head, and thus get like damage. So with a very specific position, you can kill him like in one go before the cutscene even ends. And yeah, Blindfolded like in visual, you use like you basically also use like a blindfolded setup. You do like
Yeah.
a very normalized setup, like backflips, side hops, and then you aim the bow manually towards like a specific pillar. In blindfolded, we also set it up like in a normalized way. We do like 2 backflips, 1 side hop, and then position ourselves very precisely. And since we cannot aim the bow like very into a very specific spot, we use other techniques to manipulate the camera to go like up a bit, and then down a bit. So yeah, we tested many different setups, and it was just trial and error until one worked. And yeah, again, Saver found the one that we currently use, and he found it like within, I think, like 1 hour of testing. Prior to that, I have done like 8 hours of testing, not finding any setup. And then Saver wanted to improve the setup, and he also did like a whole other day, and like he found nothing else besides that one setup that he found like super in the beginning. So kind of lucky, I think, but now we have it. So
it's really cool to watch, and that's a really good point. It almost looks like, even in the visual speed run, it looks like a a blindfolded setup, because there's the hopping and trying to find that right position with the camera and everything. It's a really good point. I guess that leads us to the Ganon fight, which is a really, even if you've played the game casually, it feels like a very interesting and kind of a unique fight to begin with. How are you able to pull this off without actually seeing, Ganon fire his lasers at you and all those kind of things?
Yeah, Ganon is, as I said, very reactional. He has a number of attacks, different kind of attacks that he can do, different patterns that he can do, and you just have to learn every single one, how they sound, and then react to whatever he does. The full script, nothing works anymore in your like script. You just need to react to it. You do know like what weapons you have, how many hits you need to do with which weapon to like get him down to correct health values. And especially in phase 2, we have a stun lock for him, which is very fortunate, because phase 2 is the worst one, where he has like an armor that you first need to parry a laser into, so you can damage him at all. But once you do it once, you can actually stun lock him in phase 2 with like a 2-handed weapon, and then just basically get his whole health bar away or down. But phase 1 is, just hear his attacks, listen for what he does, dodge it perfectly, do like the flurry rushes. If he does a laser, then parry the laser. If he climbs onto the wall, then get him down from the wall with arrows. If he does, the swiping attack, dodge with a backflip. If he does the vertical swiping attack, dodge with the side hop. Like everything has an appropriate reaction to it.
There was one little thing I noticed too, and that is you're sometimes taking health, or you're eating health meat to improve your health, because I was like, how do you tell if you're on fire or anything like that? And it seems like that's in reaction to not knowing how some of the attacks affected you.
Yeah, true. Like, so if you miss, like, that's the thing. If the fight goes perfectly, you should always have full health, of course. Like, because if he does an attack, it usually spawns like fire on the floor, for example. And you can just like run through that and you lose health, which is not good. And the worst thing about this is that the game has a 1-hit protection, so you actually can like survive any hit of Ganon with enough armor, which we have.
Yeah.
You can survive that with like a quarter of a heart, but only if you have full health. So if you run through fire and don't notice it, and then he hits you, you are dead, unfortunately. So that's why we constantly in the speedrun spam like meat, or like try to eat meat to constantly be on full health if we don't hear fire. But the true answer to this would be learn how to dodge better, because if you perfectly dodge the fire, the attack, then the fire won't even spawn. So
you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, exactly.
The last thing I thought was interesting, and I didn't realize this existed until I saw the speedruns of it, was that in Ganon's final form, you're on a horse and you're riding around, you're trying to, shoot the arrows to finish up the final form. Was this something? How was this discovered? How was this figured out to actually know where you could shoot and how this could work blindfolded?
Yeah, I believe it's still the same strat that Saver used like years ago with his first route that we use right now. but yeah, riding the horse is not a good idea blindfolded for sure.
No.
So what we do is just do from the beginning of this whole fight sequence, like normalized setup with lots of bunny hops. Like we jump first 10 times up, then 12 times to the left. And then we basically just wait on the ground and shoot arrows into specific positions where we know that it's like light rings that you need to shoot, where these rings will spawn, because they are consistent. They don't spawn in random positions, but always based on timing and his position. So as long as we always do this, it's kind of an auto scroller really. It's like you cannot really mess up. You can mess up. I messed up in my last 3 PBs and it's fine. So you can mess it up, but usually it's an auto scroller. So you just jump to one position, aim your bow, shoot the ring that appears, jump to the next position, aim your bow, and continue like that.
It's really impressive to watch, and I highly recommend, first of all, check out any of Bubzia's PBs. At the same time, I really appreciated the commentary you've had for your marathon runs, because it provides, first of all, it was great research for this interview, but also there's so many interesting things to see that you almost want, I wanted to watch the run multiple times to catch all these little intricacies and things that you're having to do, because I feel like I still haven't observed it all at this point.
I think that's a general problem with blindfolded speedruns, because there is so much in the background going on that like you will never see as a like normal viewer of the runs. Like the easiest stars in Mario 64 have like so interesting background things going on, like counts and normalizations and stuff. But yeah, I agree that commentary is always a great way to like improve the viewing experience in these kind of runs. So I always try my best to like have good commentators or like commentate my PB videos myself and stuff.
It's fantastic, and definitely appreciated that you go back, because once again during the stream, there's you're not looking at the chat, those type of things, so it's just you playing the game. You said, you mentioned that I didn't realize it had been 6 years you've been doing this. You continue to do it. It's not something, so it's still something that seems like it's of interest to you. You haven't gotten completely frustrated with it yet, huh?
No, like I have still many projects I want to finish for sure before I retire from this. And the problem is, with each project I finish, there comes like 3 new ones, so it will take a while. So far I'm having fun, so I will keep doing it.
Speaking of that, do you ever get a chance to do you game off stream? Do you do casual gaming? Are there things that you enjoy that are outside of not being able to see the game?
Yeah, definitely less time for that than when I started. Like I played more casually, but I still do here and then. Now Tears of Kingdom came out, for example. I'm slowly next to work, like after work, I sometimes play an hour or 2. But yeah, it's most of my gaming time is definitely in practicing and routing and doing blindfolded stuff, I think.
So this episode is probably going to come out after GDQ is over. I know you're going to be traveling to the States here in about a week. First of all, what are you doing at GDQ, and tell us how that grind has been going.
Yeah, I will in fact run again Breath of the Wild, any percent at GDQ now on the last day of the event. And yeah, the grind has been going pretty well. I was very frustrated a few days ago about it because, yeah, same story. Nothing. You put lots of effort into it and nothing works out as you want it to. But yeah, like in the past few days, I think I can really feel that I improved. I think I'm like capable of both the route record that I will want to do, or like I'm very close. I actually just a few days ago choked the world records in the last beast, the auto scroller that should never fail.
Right. We just saw the game over. It was painful to watch. I know this TV's just from a few days ago, so it's painful. I feel for you.
No, I'm actually very confident. I like to play at marathons too. It like I can focus very well when I play in front of crowd. So I'm excited.
I'm going to bring it up again, and I know we did it online, but SGDQ 2021, it's one of the most impressive runs I've probably ever seen. So many things went right. You hit frame perfect. You did the Siglemic skip, with the one frame perfect. It blows my mind. So many things went so well. They're really fun to watch, folks. I highly recommend if you haven't watched it before. So, dare I ask, and if there's anything you don't want to talk about, I totally understand. But what's next for you? What do you any plans in the future after this grind?
Yeah, like I have the next like 2 years planned out probably with like projects.
Perfect.
No, like after GDQ, it will be. I have another marathon in Germany, like a local marathon coming up with 70 star, and I have actually not. Like I have, it's funny because I've routed 70 star and like optimized 70 star like for like 2 years now, I think, but I never really improved my PB since like 3 years or something. So I'm coming for a big new world record. I think like yeah, it should happen quite easily if I just find some time to grind. So I'm aiming towards like a high, like a bit higher than 1 hour 70 star time, 1 hour
Wow.
10, 1 hour
Yeah,
20 or
wow.
something. And a big project will also be 16 star for the world first sub 20 blindfolded, which is like a time that is difficult to achieve visually for many people. But at this point, I just have to run optimized so much that it is possible. Like it's within the realm of possibility. So yeah, I will do a comeback to Mario a bit for like 1 or 2 months to get these records done. Then comes blindfolded Elden Ring. Elden Ring has been blindfolded by a friend of mine recently, and yeah, I'm very interested in the run generally. Ooh. So we talked about it, and he will like teach me a bit. I will learn from him, and then again try to optimize some things here and there. But yeah, blindfolded Elden Ring is on the list. Don't know how it will look with Tears of the Kingdom. Maybe if the speedrun develops a bit more. I don't want to like do anything too early now, because then a new skip gets found and everything goes to waste that I worked on.
It's still so new. We're only 2 weeks into Tears of the Kingdom.
So and I need to play it casually first as well. So, but maybe in like a year or two, we can look into it together with Saver again. Dark Souls 1 is on the list. Dark Souls 3 is on the list. Lots of Soul series.
I mean, you're just picking easy games. I don't know why you want
to. It's kind of the theme. Like I'm seeking the new challenges. You know, like this blindfolded gaming is too easy at this point.
Jeez Louise, we're at that point. Thanks to you and many others. That's so wild to me. That we're at that point. You know, it's I love to hear that you're just saying. You know, there aren't things that are going to hold you back from trying to try out a game, and I think that's super interesting and kind of amazing to where we've got to that point where it's like, yeah, you know, I think I could try. I want to try that. You know.
Yeah, it really is like that.
It blows my mind. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to chat about these. I know we took some deep dives in there, and I know you do other runs besides these two as well. So if you check out Bubzia's SRC profile, there's tons of stuff that he's done, and they're just really fun runs to watch, not to mention amazing demonstrations of skill and things like that. I thank you so much for taking some time. If people want to watch your stuff, they want to watch you stream, where can they see you do all this ridiculous stuff? It's amazing.
Yeah, mostly on Twitch. Twitch.tv/Bubzia is my main resource. I don't know how to call it. My main outlet to
place
the world.
To find you.
Yeah. I stream there like 5 days a week usually. Always blindfolded, 99% blindfolded. Sometimes a visual speedrun here and there, but it's quite rare. And yeah, on YouTube I post all my PBs if you're interested on because on Twitch I stream everything: routing, stratting, coming up with new game ideas, everything. Like I don't really do much off stream at this point. So if you're interested in the full process, then Twitch. If you're only interested in the results, then YouTube. But I highly recommend checking out the process as well. Like it's a big part of the blindfolded experience, in my opinion.
I'll leave the links in the description, and completely agree. That was it almost felt like cheating just watching your PBs, because I'm like, there's no way like this just happens by doing runs and runs and runs. Like there's so much. Like the real story is about all of the trials and errors and everything.
The routing is really the biggest part, I think.
Well, once again, much appreciated. Good luck at GDQ, and have a safe travel over here to the States. I can't wait to watch. What a great way to end the marathon this year on the last day with the blindfolded Breath of the Wild run. Thanks again, and best of luck. I can't wait to see what you do next.
All right. Then thanks for having me one more time, and see you around, I guess.
Like I said, we probably will post this like in a probably after GDQ. But thank you. I can't wait for people to see it. And I can't wait for people to see your runs if they haven't seen them before, because they are just so much fun. And this is the first GDQ I'm missing in like 5 years, and I'm so bummed that I'm not going to get you. But I'll be watching live. I promise. I'll be cheering on in the chat.
Nice. All right.
Thanks again, Bubzia, and thanks for taking the time and the time changes, the time difference, and everything. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Then. Okay. Bye bye.
Have a good one. Bye bye. Take care. And for everyone out there, thank you so much for hanging out. If you're at all interested in any of this, these type of conversations, let's see if I can. I'm going to try not to break anything by posting in the chat. Let's see, sequence breakpodcast.com. Okay, hopefully that's the right link. Did I put the right link? Maybe not. I will find out. I don't know. Yes, it is. Okay. At this point, we're up. This is episode 85, I think, 85. So a bunch of different conversations. Hope you all enjoyed. Everything's there. Here we go. Shout out to Bubzia, and shout out to everyone else. Thanks. This is our second episode on the RGL channel. I think we might rebroadcast this one on Wednesday evening if you weren't able to be here live for a Monday morning if you're here in the States, or Monday afternoon. So anyway, thanks so much. Hope you all have a good rest of your day, rest of your week. GDQ in just a week should be a lot of fun. And at some point I'll be talking about it and all the fun. Adios. Take care.